For most of human history, people told themselves an honest story. I buy because I need it. Food to eat, clothes to stay warm, tools to work, shelter to survive. Consumption was logical, limited, justified. It was a means, not an end. This story made people feel rational, restrained, and in control. Then something broke. People began buying things not for what they did, but for what they said. The value of an object stopped coming from its function and started coming from the message it sent. And the moment the shift occurred, spending stopped being about survival. It became about proving who you are, signaling where you stand, and managing how others see you. This was not a new disease. It was not born in the age of social media. Influencers, credit cards, and algorithms did not create it. They only accelerated it. Long before that, an economist noticed something deeply uncomfortable. A large share of economic behavior had almost nothing to do with utility. People were spending not because they calculated, but because they wanted to appear superior. He realized consumption was not merely an economic act. It was a social performance, a game of signaling position, quietly or loudly. And once you look through this lens, everything begins to make sense. Why so many people work more than necessary. Why they feel more anxious as they earn more. Why satisfaction declines as prosperity rises. To understand why Thorstein Veblen matters, you have to understand the world he was observing. The late 19th century was a breaking point for the United States. Industrialization was tearing the economy apart and rebuilding it at a speed no society or experienced before. Railroads stitched continents together. Steel, oil, and finance created unimaginable fortunes in the hands of a small group. At the same time, millions were pushed into factories, living long hours, low wages, and insecure, exhausting lives. This era is called the Gilded Age, a deliberate word choice, not gold, but gilded. It shone on the surface while rotting underneath, splendor above, deepening inequality below. And this inequality was not hidden. On the contrary, it was displayed. The wealthy didn't just own money, they staged it. Massive mansions rose in cities and along coasts. Armies of servants expanded. Leisure became elaborate, expensive, and visible. Ornate clothing, extravagant dinners, hobbies with no connection to productivity. None of this was accidental. These were messages. I do not have to work. What made this period different was not the size of wealth, but how consciously it was exhibited. And below there was a growing middle class watching. They were neither crushed factory workers nor powerful industrial barons, but they were surrounded by images of elite life. And those images redefined what success looked like. Being comfortable was no longer enough. To be respectable, you had to imitate. The distance between classes was no longer crossed only by earning more, but by spending more visibly. This is the environment Thorstein Veblen stepped into. Veblen did not resemble the economists of his time. He was the son of Norwegian immigrants. Raised in a frugal, modest household far removed from display, he was skeptical of authority, unimpressed by wealth. He never fully belonged in academia. He was inside elite institutions, but never dazzled by them. That outsider status gave him an advantage. He observed how wealthy people behaved when they thought no one was judging them, and he noticed something that didn't fit economics' sacred assumptions. Classical economics assumed people were rational actors. They maximized utility. They weighed costs and benefits. Waste was an error. Excess was a deviation. But the world Veblen saw was the opposite. People paid more for goods simply because they were expensive. They wore clothing that restricted movement, served no functional purpose, yet signaled refinement. They lived in homes designed to impress guests rather than to be lived in. Not working was not something to avoid. It was proof of success. These behaviors were not irrational, but utility was not the goal. The goal was status. Veblen realized that much of consumption was not about meeting needs, but about communicating position, showing that you did not have to work with your hands, that you had time to waste, that you could afford inefficiency. In a society where productivity creates wealth, the strongest status signal was not being productive, and once consumption becomes a social signal, economic logic changes at its core. Prices stop reflecting utility. Demand no longer comes from need, but from comparison. Spending becomes competitive, relative, and endless. There is no finish line in a status race, because the objective is not satisfaction, but differentiation. Veblen saw that modern economies were not merely systems of production, they were systems of comparison. And comparison has no natural limit. What disturbed him was not just wasted resources, it was wasted human effort. People exhausting themselves to maintain appearances. Families sacrificing stability for visual success. Societies that reward display more than substance. And the most dangerous part was this: if consumption is about signaling, then rising wealth does not create freedom. It intensifies pressure. The richer a society becomes, the more expensive it is just to look normal. Veblen understood this was not a flaw in human nature. It was a feature of social systems built around visibility and hierarchy. And he gave it a name: conspicuous consumption. Not consumption for comfort, not for utility. Consumption designed to be seen. A coat did not need to keep you warm. A house did not need to provide shelter. A watch did not need to tell time accurately. These were social signals, messages disguised as products. Veblen's insight was this: people were not stupid. They were responding rationally to social incentives. In a society where status is a resource, consumption becomes its most visible language. And over time, this logic hardened. Even leisure became a performance. Conspicuous leisure, the ability to afford not working. Travel, events, non-productive hobbies. Not rest, declarations of superiority. The upper class was not just wealthy, it set taste, norms, and definitions of success. And those definitions flowed downward. The middle class imitated them, then strained, then borrowed. Because the issue was never luxury, it was legitimacy, and this cycle never ends. The more productive an economy becomes, the stronger this pressure grows. Income growth does not eliminate status anxiety. It raises the entry fee. What once signaled success becomes the baseline. Veblen did not predict collapse. He diagnosed fragility. An economy driven by display allocates resources not efficiently but visibly. Debt becomes normal. Saving is minimized. Risk is hidden behind aesthetics. Luxury is expensive not because of quality but because of exclusion. Modern marketing did not invent this. It refined it. Social media made it continuous. Display is no longer occasional but constant. Even simplicity can become a status signal. The result is familiar: earning more and feeling poorer. Because we do not measure ourselves absolutely, but relative to others. Real wealth does not need an audience. It does not announce itself loudly. But in a visibility-obsessed system, it has little value. Veblen did not expose this to shame individuals, but to reveal the game. Because once you see the game, you do not have to play every move. If you do not understand the incentives shaping you, They will quietly shape your future.